So I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers today. Our speaker roundtable is Reverend Dr. Courtney Stang Traeger, sorry, CEO and President, Disciples Church Extension Fund. We also have Jim Howard, Vice President of Operations, Insurance Board. And we have Jim Michael, Building and Capital Service Advisor, Disciples Church Extension Fund, and me. So today, we're going to start with having Reverend Traeger start our time together with explaining what Disciples Church Extension Fund is all about, and then we're kind of go around and we'll answer questions as we get through them. So as we go, we're going to share a screen because, of course, we need to have a PowerPoint.
Well, while Chad's doing that, I'm going to start talking. Thanks, Chad, for the introduction. I'm really glad to be here. As Chad just said, I'm the president and CEO of Disciples Church Extension Fund. I started here at DCEF, which is what we fondly refer to our name, Disciples Church Extension Fund, DCEF. I started here at the beginning of March. I am ordained in the United Church of Christ, and I have served churches and regional judicatories and financial ministries. So I'm very excited to be here at DCEF and excited to be with you all today. Chad, if you want to go to the next slide. One more.
There we go.
Nope.
There. Got excited.
DCEF works with congregations in a variety of ways, but before I kind of get too far into that, I'm going to say a little bit about just what a church extension fund is. Most of us have never really heard of that concept or don't really know what that is. But the church extension fund model is actually about 150 years old, and the disciples are not the only ones who do this. It's a basic concept of a way that churches can organize money to serve God and community. So what we do is we sell very simple investments that are for a certain term at a fixed amount of return. So I might buy a 12-month term note, and I can say how much money that will be, and then over those 12 months, how much interest that will earn. It's a very simple way of investing. Now, with those dollars, we create a pool of capital that we're then able to use to make loans to churches and faith-based nonprofits. So when your church needs a new roof, or it has a vision of expanding the food pantry, or maybe you want to grow the preschool, you might need financing to do the repairs or renovations or live into the vision or calling that you have as a congregation. And that's where DCEF comes in with a loan. And we're able to make those loans because of that pool of capital I mentioned that's compiled from all of the investors investing with us. And that's individuals and institutions like churches and regions and other ministries. So that's the basic flow. We sell simple investments to make loans to congregations and other faith-based nonprofits. And then as those loan payments are repaid, we're able to pass the interest on back to our investors. And that's what creates the flow of money that I like to think of as organizing money for God and community to do the missions of transformation and serving God and neighbor in our community. Now, in addition to that very simple church extension fund model that, as I said, is the same across many church extension funds of a variety of types across the country, there's also some additional things that make DCEF unique. We also are very intentional about the ways that we partner with and serve property and people. So in addition to the financial aspects, we also do a lot of support for the church building and campus itself through building evaluations and disaster recovery and repair services, and a variety of things to do with the property. Additionally, we do a lot that helps support the people of the congregation. So we provide services around transformational services for a church that's trying to revitalize or revision who they are in this time. And we do additional things around capital campaign support, all sorts of different things to support the finances, the property, and the people of the congregation. That's what makes Disciples Church Extension Fund unique, and it's what makes me very excited to serve as the president and CEO.
Sounds great, Courtney. Thank you for that. And again, this partnership that we have with DCEF is great. And we'd like to send it over to Jim Howard. And Jim's going to talk about some items through Insurance Board and how we kind of fit into all this. Jim, I
Sure.
can run the slides for you.
Yeah.
I'm Van.
Thanks a bunch. I really appreciate that, Chad. And thanks, Courtney. Looking forward to getting some feedback from all of you today and just trying to share things that can help us be a better insurance program for your churches. So next slide, if you wouldn't mind. Just some background on who the Insurance Board is and why we're sitting here today. Back in the 1980s, it was very difficult for churches to buy insurance. And it was very challenging. It's very similar to what we've seen over the last few years of recently, which we call a hard market, where it's very hard to get pricing, it's very hard to get coverage and things like that. And churches were really struggling with that. And so that's why we formed this program back in the 1980s to help churches obtain adequate insurance. We started out as what's called a group purchasing organization to help our churches. And it started in California is actually where we started. Incorporated in 1985 as a 501c3 and as the United Church in Christ Insurance Advisory Board. Very lengthy word title. And then we changed it to the United Church Insurance Association. And just recently, we've even gone down to a much more condensed called the Insurance Board is where we sit today. Back in 2001, we were looking at even going and incorporated where we could be somewhat what they would call not necessarily self-insured, but it's called a captive insurance program. And we domiciled in the state of Hawaii in 2001, fully becoming operational in 2002 as an independent insurance group. And we're able to work there and have our own profits there and be able to help out our churches a little bit. So next slide. Just to give you an idea of some of the insurance, different denominations that we insure, just to give you some background on myself, I guess I should give that area as well. I am the vice president of the Insurance Board for the operations. So what I oversee is the underwriting department and the loss control department, and spend a lot of time working with our different brokers on reinsurance, purchasing the proper reinsurance and coverages that we need to make sure that this program is successful. But right now we have 6 denominations that we work with exclusively. And those are obviously the United Church of Christ, which we started in 1985. And then the Disciples of Christ, they came on board in 1991. And then the Presbyterian Church joined us in 2009. And then there's a small group of Baptist churches, about 120, called the Alliance of Baptists. They joined us in 2016. And then 2018, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America and the Reformed Church in America both came on board with us. The reason I kind of say some of this is because we are actually talking with another denomination right now, and hopefully we'll be working with them by the end of this year. One that I worked with very closely starting back in 1999. So I'm very familiar with that program and very familiar with insuring churches. I've done it for a few years, as you can tell by the hair being a little white, some of the years that we've been in there. So, but just wanted to kind of give you some background there of who I am and why everything is and what the Insurance Board's all about. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Just some background on what we do. At Insurance Board, we currently insure over 4,500 churches in all 50 states. We actually have coverage in all 50 states for all churches, for those denominations. And among those ministries, my last count was just the other day, was 583 Disciples of Christ churches who are in 40 of the states right now. We don't have all 50 states yet, but we are in 40 of them right now with 583 churches. Very excited. Those 583 churches represent about $11.2 million in annual premium that we work with. And then just to give you an idea of the size of the churches, we have values ranging from under 10,000, which is with contents only, where the church is renting a space or the office is renting a space, and we just have some content coverages there, to more than $60 million. It's one of the top 5 churches that we insure in California with the Disciples of Christ at $60 million, and that's one of our bigger churches. And the average insured value is approximately $3.8 million, to just give you an idea of the value and where we're at in the scope of things. So next slide. Our mission that we work on is, our mission is to connect faith-based institutions to comprehensive and customized risk and insurance management solutions anchored in shared trust and sacred responsibility. It's a lot of words, but it just kind of helps us keep our focus in what we're trying to do to help all churches in those 6 denominations that want to come to us and be insured, finding ways to help protect them and give them the proper coverage that they need. Next one. Next bullet. Our relationship requires us to honor our obligations and providers as insurance and risk management services, which means we have to bear the financial consequences. That's where we buy the insurance to cover everything. And it also requires, which is a big part of what we're going to be talking about today, is it requires our church ministries to actively share in that obligation by working to mitigate risk at their ministries. And that's going to be a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So next bullet point, if you wouldn't mind. Protecting our churches is a high priority. We do this by providing proactive loss control resources that strengthen ministries and maintain future claim exposures. And every time I talk to Chad, he's always cringing, because the number one thing that we talk about is what we can do to protect our churches and help them do proper maintenance to prevent future claims. So the next slide, if you wouldn't mind. These are kind of the topics that we're going to talk about. Just kind of, those were in the flyer as well. Insurance board, how do we support your ministry? What resources and risk mitigations are there out there for us? Understanding and addressing deferred maintenance. How do we help you with that? And best practice ongoing building maintenance with Jim and Chad will talk about a lot. But next slide. Just take a look, some of the things that when we look at catastrophic losses, what do we think about? We always think about hurricanes, such as windstorms. The next one is just flooding. What happens? The next slide is flooding. What's happening? We've had a lot of derecho claims and that going through. I live in the Chicago area. We just got hit pretty hard through the south side of Chicago, through Indiana, down into Kentucky, where there's that. We just got notice of a couple of churches with claims in Hawaii that got hit with the hurricane that's out there that hit this weekend as well. So many different things. And unfortunately, with the next slide you look at, is also a lot of wildfires have been going on all over the country. We lost a church in the Lahaina fire, back a few years ago, and then actually January, we lost a church in California from those fires as well. So they're all over the place. And the reason I kind of put this up, if you wouldn't mind, Chad, go to the next slide. The reason I look at this is those are catastrophic events, basically called acts of God. And there's very little that we can do to protect ourselves against that, other than making sure that we've got our vegetation, trimmed around our churches and things like that, especially if you're out in the wilderness a little bit more, such as our camps and things like that. But just to give you an idea of all the claims that we pay, and this is no different than any other insurance company, pretty much, about 72% of our claims are all property driven. And when you really look at a lot of our claims and what's been, how it's been turned in, what's been going on, a reasonable industry estimate is that, somewhere between 25 and 50%, up to 50% of non-catastrophic property claims may be preventable or significantly reduced through strong preventative maintenance programs. And that's what we always look at, and how we can help our churches with preventative maintenance. Next slide. And just to give you an idea, what are some of the roof claims that we look at that are really, and a lot of times, preventable? Roof leaks, water intrusion. Your roof hasn't been updated in a while, and there's a couple shingles missing, and things like that are going on. Frozen and burst pipes. If you remember, many of you might remember the Texas freeze that happened, and we had lots of churches and lots of buildings down there that just weren't protected properly. And so when they froze, that was okay. But the minute that it thawed out, of course, the pipes were burst and the water was flowing everywhere. We see lots of failures from air conditioning units that are sitting on roofs and they're leaking and they're starting to leak through things. Electrical faults, just not having updated electricity issues are always a concern. Blocked gutters and drainage systems, it backs up, especially in the winter up in the northern parts of the country where you've got ice dams building up and there's no way for that to get out. And so that ends up coming in and damaging different buildings and stuff. And exterior deterioration leading to structural damage just because some siding, fell off or there's a hole or something like that. Things like that are what we look at as preventative maintenance and some things that they'll be addressed as we go through the presentation today. So next slide, Chad. And now I'll turn it back over to our stars of today, Jim Michael with the DCEF. I like that. I've never heard that before, Courtney, so appreciate that. I now can get that quicker and remember that DCEF. I like that. And then Chad Cunningham, who is the director of our loss control. Our loss control team is very small, but they're a very mighty group. They have amazing information, and they're always looking to help out our churches in any way they can possibly, and helping out our underwriting team to find the best way to insure our churches and keep them safe and sound as best as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
Great. Thank you very much, Jim and Courtney. Appreciate you guys with that great introduction of the two groups partnering and how we come together and how we work as a team to better prepare our churches for risk and mitigate. So the rest of this time is going to be until our Q&A. Mr. Jim Michael, you will hear me call him Jim or JM so we don't get confused with Jim Howard. So we're going to really jump into this and we're going to tag team this as we go through it. And as you see here, we are here to serve you on both sides of it. But as we start to go here, I always want to have a quick conversation about deferred maintenance. And Jim hears it on his end. I hear it when we talk to our churches, deferred maintenance. And it's kind of like, where does it get you? I almost kind of look at it as a bad word. Us in the industry of evaluations and inspections, we hear deferred and we kind of shudder a little bit. But, what do we talk about when we look at these hidden costs of deferred maintenance? One is a consequence of what's the consequences? Because, if we're deferring something, we're pushing something off to a later time, even though it might need it now. And by postponing maintenance, this leads to deterioration, increasing risk of water damage, as you heard Jim Howard talking about, mechanical breakdowns that could be in our HVAC systems, in our boiler systems, all right, and electrical fires. Because if we're not looking at electrical panels properly, if we're not maintaining those, we work into those areas there too. And that can also lead to liability and safety risk. Because again, the environment that we're in at the church, we want a safe community and a safe environment for our churches, for everybody to come and congregate and worship together. So deferred maintenance can lead to increased slip, trips, and fall hazards. And I think Jim's going to talk about some of that and showed some great pictures that he's seen and been out there as we walk through this. Cracked sidewalks, poor lighting, missing handrails, even the impact on your insurance and budgets. Poor maintenance raises insurance premiums and forces costly emergency repairs, diverting funds from the church programs. And we know and we understand that, part of our area you saw is part mission. We're not just a company of insurance. We're a ministry, a financial ministry of the United Church of Christ in collaboration with the Disciples of Christ. And so we are a ministry also. So we want to make sure that we have our churches where they need to be. And so it can impact here, especially when looking at claims and how can claims be possibly denied because of wear and tear. And we'll talk about that. And then preventive maintenance benefits. So let's, kind of change that word from deferred to preventative, because if we invest in regular maintenance, by investing in regular maintenance, it will reduce risk, controls expenses. It supports long-term stewardship of church property. So when you start budgeting and starting to look at it, it's not like you have to have something all of a sudden and be surprised. You have that money sitting there, and we're going to talk about kind of where we want to be. So as we kind of go through this, we really want to talk more on the preventative, but we need to get this bad thing deferred out of the way on where we're at. So, Jim, what do you see? What are some things that you're seeing as you're out there? Want to introduce and tell people what you do there? And
Oh, Chad, the things that I see, some of them are very, very scary, I will admit. Thank you, Chad. As everybody said, my name is Jim Michael. I am a building and capital services advisor with DSEF. I'm also the disaster response coordinator. I've been with DSEF for 12 and a half years. My white hair may have came from the insurance. I'm not sure. But I have had the opportunity to work with a lot of congregations and organizations since coming to DSEF and forming the disaster response. But part of what I also do is work with congregations and organizations with their buildings and their facilities. Facilities includes the property, it includes the parking lots. My background was I spent 36 years in the civil engineering profession, the field. Loved everything that I did there. So buildings were second nature to me. I've been around construction all of my life. Had thought I wanted to be an architect at one point until I was actually interning. I was working with an architect and came to the realization I like to be outside. So I went to a different field. But anyway, since coming to Church Extension, one of the things that I have done is working with congregations and looking at their facilities. Church Extension, we have a couple of different services that are available. We have building evaluations and we have the initial consultations, which has a building review with it. There's a big difference between the two of them. Building evaluations, we're looking at everything from the foundation up to the top of the steeple. The building reviews, we're taking a look. We're going to identify things that we see, and this starts at the outside, as you can see, the entrances. But we're looking for things that would cause liability. I'm always thinking about liability, and that comes probably from my background in business. How do we reduce liability? And so as I'm looking and I'm thinking about the insurance board as well, what things do we see when we are looking around the building? How can we reduce that? So, those are things that are there. But sometimes, as a member of a congregation, you get so used to walking past something or seeing something. One of the things that, as a first time set of eyes coming in, I see things completely different than those that have been going through, year after year and seeing the same things. So, using the services that we have, the building review or the building evaluation, we're looking at all of this. How can we take, what deferred maintenance do we have? And as Chad said, that's really kind of a dirty word because we don't like to say that, well, we have put it off, but it has. It really has. And it does. It becomes a safety issue. We overlook stuff because we've seen it. Whether that's, with cracks in the concrete on our steeple, which think about that if it falls down. We've got things that maybe we don't understand what's going on. We have a piece of equipment that we see and it doesn't quite look right, but we don't know, is that okay or is that not okay? So that's where, we come in and we take a look at it. Uh, Handrails, as Chad was saying, looking at the handrails, are they in the correct location? Do they meet code? We've got some of these, our buildings were built back, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. Rails were a lot different back then, the requirements, than they are today. So do we meet, the requirements that are, asked for? So these are things that, as we're going through and we're doing the reviews, and, whether it's a review or an evaluation, we are seeing these things and we're going to identify that. We're trying to figure out ways that where we can help our congregations today to bring the cost of maintaining those buildings down. Part of that is how do we take and reduce our insurance, premiums, and that could be possibly with our maintenance. Do we meet the requirements that they are looking for with this? So these are all things that we're doing together. So, one of the things that I laugh about is we get so used to stuff that we don't even see it. Putting an emergency light behind, our shelves, so that if it was ever needed, in this particular case, if that emergency light had to come on, we would be in trouble because it was in a basement and there was no other lights around. So when I found this, it was, one of those, oh gosh, we need to take care of this type of situation. So, and the second, is with the health and safety. Do we take and overload our electrical systems? Are we surprised that we have a fire because we've got stuff like this going on? I know that the insurance industry would look at this and they would have a fit. But these are things that I like to bring to your attention beforehand. And so that's one of the things that we do here at DCEF. So
Great,
I'll
Jim.
turn this
And
over to Chad. Chad's got some case studies.
yeah, I think it's always important. And Jim had a great point when he talks about handrails and what's, the best practices. Now, when we, as from an insurance perspective, we're always doing inspections, right? What's going on? How can we help? Where are you at? Kind of the same thing as Jim does for DCEF. And many times we get a lot of people asking, well, we have a handrail, but the ballards, so think of the ballards as the vertical strings aren't there. It's just an open handrail. Well, according to code, that's not good. We need to have those in 4 inches. So, a lot of those aspects we really look at and figure out where those are. But I always like to, try to show when we talk about what happens, where it's at, to kind of have a little case study go. And so here we took place of a 1-story church, confirmed that a flat roof has no storm created openings. There was no wind damage on it. So this was a case that somebody have, and they put in a claim. The conditions of, observe ponding water, blocks, scuppers, improperly installed gutters, and deteriorated, eroded caulking and flashing. So again, deferred maintenance, pushing it off, not seeing what's there. And as you see in the picture, there probably should be something there to kind of help. When the inspectors come out, and this is why, Jim and I talk about, really having preventative maintenance, because when the inspectors comes out, they're going to look at, is there wear and tear, is there lack of maintenance and deterioration, which are excluded in most insurance policies. So again, we're talking insurance policies in general, but including if you're here with the insurance board. So with this in play, this might not be covered as well as they would like it to be based on the preventative maintenance that was not conducted. So by saying that, I always like to come in and also say it's very, very important anytime you're dealing with property, liability, when you have insurance, and I'm sure everybody on this call has looked at your insurance policy, both your personal ones and maybe the church one, because sometimes it's great reading when you're having problems sleeping. Just get it out and start reading through it. It's there, but you really want to see what is some of the exclusions within your policies. I think that's important to understand what's there, what's covered and what's not. Like for the insurance board policy, under the causes of loss in the exclusion part in the special form, page 32 of the document, it will talk about wear and tear, rust or other corrosion decay, settling, cracking, shrinking, expansion. It will say faulty or inadequate or defective. So these are things that, if you looked at that picture, probably would reflect that. Material used in repair, construction, renovation, remodeling, or maintenance of part of or all the property on or off the described premises. So it's just very important that you read your policy, you know what it says, and you know how that's going to be determined as something happens. And one of those catastrophic type events, as you saw Jim Howard talk about, that's when our insurance really plays a part. Our insurance premium, our insurance coverage is not that for maintenance. It's not a maintenance plan. It's for that insurance plan when that catastrophic event happens. And I think that's very, very important as we go through this. So, Jim, let's forget about that deferred stuff. Let's move it out. All right, let's talk about some preventative stuff. Because if we can prevent it, that's a risk mitigation, and it just helps us all the way around. And so why do we want preventative maintenance? Well, there's a couple reasons, y'all. One, risk reduction and safety. Preventive maintenance identifies and fixes small issues before they cause serious injuries. You saw the pictures that Jim had of those sidewalks. I'm sure that just didn't happen overnight. That was ongoing, right? So we want to make sure it's safe because, again, our church environment, we want to be safe for our congregants. Extend building lifespan. Regular maintenance helps prolong aging church infrastructure by reducing wear on roofs, HVAC units, and electrical systems. Even, when we go certain ways to have lightning rods that are installed properly, we've seen those. I've been reading those a lot this year so far, where, we probably had 4 or 5 electrical claims based on lightning strikes. So what do we have in that as a preventative maintenance as we go through there? So cost savings and predictability. Planned maintenance is more affordable and predictable than emergency repairs because what always happens? An emergency comes up when you're not ready for it. But if we have preventative maintenance, we have it as part of our budget. We know it's there. We don't have to worry about it and get stressed out about it. And then volunteer involvement and accountability. Structured preventive maintenance can really guide building and grounds volunteers. And again, as we look through this, remember your volunteers, keep them on the ground, keep them doing stuff that they're okay to do. We don't want all of our volunteers going up on scissor lifts and all those because we still have those liability aspects. We want to be safe, but maintaining those lower areas where we can. And really, it's a whole church functionality, right? So if everybody understands that preventive maintenance is if you see something, we're going to take that phrase from, kind of the safety aspects of emergency safety of see something, say something. Same thing with preventative maintenance, right? If you see something that doesn't look right, that could cause injury or harm to us from a property aspect, you should say something to somebody there. So speaking of that, Jim, what about these? This looks fine.
Well, one thing, Chad, that I wanted to throw in there while we were talking about volunteers, working with volunteers, after a disaster, one of the things that I always take into consideration as I'm working with the churches is, we have a lot of people that want to come in and they want to help, but there are certain things that they can't do, or it puts the church at risk with future insurance claims. If we bring in, a group that wants to throw on shingles, but they have no experience with this, they did not pull the permits, and we put it in place, and then 5 years down the road we have something happen. and we're going to file a claim again on this. Well, the insurance company is going to look at this and go, you didn't pull permits on this. You didn't have qualified individuals that were in place to put this. So we've got to be careful as to what we're using volunteers for. Electrical, I always say electrical, if you're doing something, you're adding, some outlets or something like that, you still need to have a licensed electrician come in to do that. That's just looking at how do you reduce your liability, and you don't want to take the chance that the insurance is not going to take and follow through because you didn't follow the steps that were required of you. So I'll throw that out there. That's one of the things I really appreciated when I saw that on your slide there. But one of the things that that we talked about is reducing liability. And in this slide that I have up right now, you see the rolls, the trip hazards that we have, with the carpet in here. Now, when we're coming through and we're walking through the facility and we're looking at this, we're looking at loose tiles, we're looking, at carpet, but it's all because of liability. How can we reduce the liability? And another thing is that we're looking at the aesthetics as well. How does this look to a first-time visitor that's coming in and they see this? So we're looking at it from several different perspectives with as we're meeting with you and we're looking at your facility. We want it to be as safe as possible for everybody in there, and we want it to look as nice as possible as well. So those are things that we're looking at. Don't walk past. We need to update and modernize. These are actually these were in congregations, these were in church buildings that I actually visited not long ago. We've got to think about, okay, if we have a problem, can we still get parts to service our equipment? The answer for these two particular pictures is absolutely no on there. They are in bad shape. I would hope that if the insurance company sent an inspector out there that he would have taken and tagged both of these. But these are things that that we want to take and we want to bring up. We want to look at this. Is this something that could potentially end up being a fire hazard? These are things that we look at as we're walking through, and we want all of you. This is not deferred maintenance. This is modernization. This is preventive maintenance that we're talking about here. But another aspect is, with modernization and preventive, is looking at our equipment. Is our equipment up to date? Is it modern? Is it energy efficient? And in the case of these, and these were actual furnaces that were in place. The one on the far right, thank goodness, had died and was no longer in use, but the other two are. So those are the things that we see out there. How can we take and modernize, be more efficient, but we're also taking and reducing, the opportunity for fires, and equipment failures. So these are all things that we're going to look at. Now, Chad, I think you're going to talk about how do we figure out that I hate using the word budget.
Money, right? Well, Jim, we always have a conversation when it comes down to preventative maintenance. It's like maintenance costs money. We all know that. Research shows us that deferred maintenance costs more money actually than preventative maintenance. But how do we make sure that we have that preventative maintenance? when I talk to churches from a loss control mitigation, risk mitigation perspective, I always say you should always have a line item within your budget for maintenance. And everybody always asks me, well, how much? Well, it's going to be different for everybody else. Everybody's different, right? Based on the size, based on what you have, so on and so forth. So common budgeting benchmarks I found is really you want to look at $2.25 per square foot. So if you take your square footage, and we're going to talk about that, and then you want to take that dollar amount and 60 to 80% of that money you want to put into preventative maintenance program. The other 20 to 40%, depending on how much you're going to put in, you want to reserve for corrective reactive repairs. So that supply line breaks in the toilet, we see those. Well, that you take out of that 20 to 40%. So what does that really come down to? Well, if I have a building that's 5,790 square feet, this is one of the
Nice round number.
Oh, of course it is. Come on. I need to make it easy. I'm not a accountant. I'm a safety guy, right? So if we take that 5,790 square feet and we multiply that by the 225, we get $13,027. That's our maintenance budget, our preventative maintenance budget. So then, though, we need to break it apart, right? Like we talked about up front. So then we would take about $7,000, almost $8,000, and that would be in our preventative maintenance program. So we can look through and look at that. And then that other, I went 60% there. And then the 40% in line with that corrective or reactive repairs, like I said, the supply line to the toilets or something in the sink, whatever the case may be. That always happens. It always happens at my church, it seems like, on Sunday mornings. We need to have that happen. So that would be our budget then, and how it kind of plays out. So as you start looking at, well, what will my budget be? Just take your square footage and multiply it by 225, and then that's kind of where you're going to need to be. Now, when Jim and I were talking about this before, he likes to go one step farther. So I'm going to let Jim talk about the other side of the money, since I talk about budget. I'm not going to get in trouble, where he likes to be proactive and not reactive.
The problem with it is, Chad, is that I came from the business side and into the church side, which was very, very different from each other. My wife is a minister within the denomination, so I get to work with taking care of the buildings and, excuse me.
Yep.
But one of the things, when I hear, congregations talk about budget, we budget this. Well, that's fantastic. We're thinking about the funds that would be needed to maintain the building. But how many congregations go one step further and they put that money actually aside? It's no longer budgeted. It's real. It exists. So, what I always, when I'm working with congregations, I always say, let's be proactive rather than being reactive. Let's, start thinking ahead about what could possibly happen. Let's look at our equipment, our HVAC, our kitchen equipment, our water heaters, our roof. And let's look at because there are industry standards that tell us how long these pieces of equipment should take and last. And so based off of that, you can actually start putting aside funds to cover that before it actually happens. So we're being proactive about it rather than waiting until it happens. And then we get to ask our minister to stand up in front of everybody and say, hey, we need to replace this. So what I talk to congregations is I say, what is the single largest maintenance expense that the congregation could face? And that's a question that as I'm talking to the leaders within the church, they're trying to figure out, okay, so what would we have? And there's several things that could possibly be, there. Major equipment, examples, HVAC, kitchen equipment, the elevator. So, this is, what we're looking at is we don't always think about this because everything is working today, but is it going to be working tomorrow? So, another thing is, do we have funds set aside for the insurance deductible? Wind and hail today. I think about it, a congregation that I worked with this year, and it wasn't with the insurance board, just throw that out there. They have had the same insurance carrier for over 20 years. They got their notice of renewal in January, which we're all used to seeing those, but nothing has changed in the 20 years. We've had the same agent and all of that, but they didn't read it. On April 2nd of this year, they were hit by a tornado, wind and hail. They felt that there was not going to be any real issues with this. I was talking with them. The adjuster comes out and he looks at everything. He says, yes, everything is going to be covered. You're in good shape. Until they saw the deductible on there. On April 1st, their policy went into effect. With everything new. Their deductible went from $3,500 for the roof for wind and hail. It went to $112,000. So it went to a percentage of that. And they were definitely not ready for that much in case. So, long story short is read through your renewals, know what you have, but be ready for it. This is something that we're going to see, and I'm having worked with the insurance, all these years. This is very, very important that we understand what they have been going through. The amount of claims has just been incredible, and they keep rising in cost. So yes, going from a $3,500 to replace the roof to $112,000, I totally understand where they're coming from with this. So these are things that we need to keep in mind and put aside. Another thing is what maintenance projects are identified over the next 1 to 3 years. Do we have a facilities team in place? And have we taken and let that team go through the building and identify maintenance issues? We won't even call them all deferred maintenance, but these are things that they see that are going to need to be addressed over the next 1 to 3 years. Do we have those funds set aside? Again, being proactive rather than reactive. So do you already have a building maintenance fund already in place? And that was what Chad was referring to with the budget stuff. But I'm talking about, do we physically have a separate fund that is out there? And, one of the things that Church Extension that we are trying to take and get congregations to understand is we can set up these investment funds for these type of situations. If the money is there, it's actually making money for you as you're waiting for that need. So, but think ahead rather than waiting until something happens is huge. And yeah, then we'll go on and we'll talk about these next things, the high risk.
Excellent. So again, budget's important, preventive maintenance is important, but where are some areas that we really want to highlight and look at those preventive maintenance priorities? Well, again, when we look at those areas, the building envelope is always very, very important. And most of you are looking at me, I'm sure right now on the screen going, that's not an envelope. Yes, that's the building envelope. So the building envelope is critical for preventing water intrusion and costly property damage in churches. So you heard Jim Howard talk about, one of the major losses that all insurance companies have is water infiltration, whether it's from exterior, as you saw even in our case study, where flat roofs, where it's puddling, there's wind damage possibly, or just the shingles were not properly installed. Gutters were backed up, not cleaned out. Those are part of the envelopes that's allowing things, because think of the envelope, it protects the letter, right? You seal it. That's what the envelope here on the building looks at too, is preventing that water from getting into the building or around the building. Regular inspections of your roofs, flashings, gutters, and drainage help detect early deterioration signs to prevent leaks. Again, where's that water usually coming from? It's your roofs, it's your flashing. So understanding, I've seen that from our claims department where, flashing wasn't installed properly. So it goes back to what Jim was saying, making sure that you have a certified individual that's carrying their own insurance that has the documentation to assist you in those areas. And make sure that, you have a contract there in place with that third party vendor that you're going to use as a contractor. And then, manage water risk. Insulating pipes. Those of you that are in that, you know what? I'm not even going to say it. Everybody on this call, whether in California, Texas, or the East Coast where we get cold all the time, insulating pipes is important. All right, because we never know, frozen busted pipes. That's a water claim. We see a lot of those. So insulating pipes, controlling your HVAC condensers, because where is it, if it starts to drip based on it, where is it dripping to? Directing your water away from the foundations reduces those risks. So you want to make sure those are there and updated. And then exterior water management and documentation, the proper grading is important. You want that grade, which means the dirt in your nice flower beds around it can't be going down into the foundation. We want it a little bit higher along the building property, and it goes out into the parking lot or the walkway, wherever, just away from that building area. Vegetation management. This is important because a lot of times the vegetation management basically means, how many of y'all think about it? You have trees next to the church, or the house that you own, whatever the case may be, and you have these big tree branches going over. And what they do is they start deteriorating your roof line. Or if it storms and they fall on it, it kind of hurts your roof line. So making sure those are kind of cut back, not overarching on top of your roof structures, and really even just from a safety aspect, making sure they're all trimmed up nice so people can't hide behind them, sit behind them, lay behind them, whatever the case may be. So a little safety in there with preventive maintenance. But really, maintenance records is important, and we'll talk about it, a couple of checklists here towards the end of this. So the envelope, water especially, very, very important. So what are we sealing the envelope, Jim? How do we seal it up?
Oh gosh, Chad, I tell you, sealing the envelope is, if you've ever been with me as I'm talking about the buildings, is something that I stress over and over and over. You've got to seal the envelope. You've got to keep the elements on the outside out. This particular case is, where a congregation had me come in, and I was looking at the facility. We had some water infiltration from the roof, which, they thought was fairly new, that they really hadn't noticed this. And it was in an area of the building that's not used a lot. But upon going up onto the roof, we're finding water that is almost 6 inches deep. It was to the point we actually had tadpoles in place. So this is water that has been up there a while. This is not new. But these are things that we need to look at. Things that we don't think about is going up, cleaning out the scuppers, cleaning out the gutters, and making it so that the water can take and run off. Checking the flashing, looking at the gutters themselves, looking at the downspouts, The downspouts going into an underground drain. Do we know if those underground drains are cleared? Have we ever checked that to see if we have water that's actually going all the way out? These are things, but sealing the envelope, as I'd said, taking and looking at the flashing water that is blown, up under that flashing it's looking for a place to come in, and it will find a place. Believe me. Is the gutter properly installed? Well, in this particular picture, it's not. The gutter was about to fall off, in fact. But what that does is it allows the water to take and come down across the fascia and then across the soffit, or it allows the water to take and come directly onto the exterior of the building. And we say, well, we have a brick building or we have a stone building, so water's not going to hurt it, correct? And that is so misleading. Yes, it's brick. It's there. It's hard. But brick is not impervious to water. It will actually take and will soak water through it. Stone is the same thing. Limestone is terrible about that. We want to get the water. We don't want it running down the face of the building. We want it to get away from the building, and we want to direct it away from the building as quickly as possible. Our downspouts, are hugely important. But, when we're walking through the building, one of the things that I learned years ago, and I was talking to a psychologist, and they were saying that people will see from eye level, they will see from it, and they will see down to the floor. And because I had always said that when I walk into a room, I see the ceiling before I ever see the floor. I'm always looking up. And so many times we have, people that don't even realize that we have water damage because we never see the ceiling. And in this case, we have water damage, but we're also right at the start of having black mold. So we have a health and safety issue with this. So these are things to be thinking about. Water damage can do so much. The water infiltration, getting up there, making sure we get that water off the roof and away from the building is just, hugely important as we're going forward. But the one thing that I will say with sealing of the envelope, we're looking at the roof, we're looking at the windows, we're looking at the doors, we're looking at all parts of this. So, one of the things, rules of thumb that I always give churches is that to take, and when you get the water down to the ground, you get that water in minimum of 8 feet away from the foundation, a minimum 8 feet. And then that way it's not so likely to come back against the foundation and down the foundation. So many of our problems start from there. But we'll go into the interior safety systems.
I would say we talk about the outside of the envelope. Let's talk about the letter in the envelope, right? I don't know. It sounded like a good analogy. We'll see. So electrical system maintenance. Regular inspections prevent electrical fires caused by overloaded circuits, outdated wiring, and improper extension cord use. I know Jim sees this. I've seen this going out to different churches. We have the extension cord plugged into the extension cord, plugged into another one, and then we might have something that is a surge protector, maybe. Or we have 4 surge protectors and 15 cords, right? So you saw Jim having those pictures. We really want to reduce that. One connection only when we work through those. And you saw some of those electrical panels. Folks, a lot what we see when we look at our inspections and send some of our groups out, everybody wants to put tape over empty spots in your electrical panel. That is a no-no. Electrical does not like that. So they are inserts, what they call dummy inserts, that you would put in there to properly close that area off, because that is still a live area where electricity is still flowing through in the electrical panel. So looking at those areas. And that way, in case something does get overloaded, and this is something that Jim and I have talked about and we've seen also, is I know the best storage unit in our churches worldwide is the mechanical room. I know, because that's the only place that nobody can get to. But we store everything in there, but we cannot. We got to watch that, because again, if something would happen, we need to make sure. So remember, around your furnaces, your boilers, your electrical panels, you need 36 inches space around it. So put all the stuff all the way around as long as it's 36 inches so you can get to it. That's very, very important, and that is code. And so any inspector that comes out is going to find that, and that will be a recommendation from whether it's the inspector looking at from loan aspects from Jim's world, or inspection from safety and security from in an insurance company. They will say that you need to remove those items and make that 36-inch gap there. Fire extinguishers, alarms, and sprinklers. Those are always good to keep up to par. You need to have those inspected yearly, especially our sprinkler systems. Sometimes, we forget about those because they're up in the ceiling and we don't look up until something breaks, or then we have the flood. But, those are all very, very important to have, and make sure those are up to par. Emergency lighting, as you saw in Jim's pictures earlier, you can't cover those up, because if something's going on, they light the pathway. They provide it when power goes out, and we need those emergency lightings, exit signs, and safe walkways. These are all stuff that we look at as we come through conducting investigation or inspection, sorry. And kitchen fire risk management. Again, if you have a commercial style kitchen, it's different than our residential ones. You have to have kitchen hoods with ducts. You have to have an ANSEL system, which means you have the powder that comes in right over top of the stove area. You should have the silver canisters for the fire extinguishers. So not just the ABCs. It's called a K. It's this big silver one you should have inside your kitchen. So those are all concepts that you need to have while you're in there. And really, we're at that time. So Jim's going to run through these real quick, and then we're going to kind of open it up to a couple little Q&A, so we can be cognizant of everybody's time. Jim?
Well, Chad, you were talking about, that the need to take and meet the rules, the codes, with your inspectors. One of the things that, most churches have a relationship with the fire marshal. The fire marshal is usually through the building, at least annually. They're looking at your exit signs. They're looking to see if your fire extinguishers have been brought up to code. They're looking out for the good of the congregation. I will say that there are times that they allow churches a little more leeway. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing, because I've seen cases where, no, it should have been red flagged a long time ago. But, this picture that I have here is something that I've seen, and it's scary. We have a gas water heater, and as Chad said, our mechanical rooms become the storage place for everything. And, within 5 to 6 feet of the water heater, we have the gas can for the lawnmower. And this is a definite no-no in here. So I wish I could say that I have only seen this one time in all the years that I've been around, but it's not. So being very careful that we do not take and have flammables that are in the same location as our furnaces, that are in the same location as our water heaters. We've got to keep them separated. In most cities, they require you to have a flammable liquids cabinet where everything can be stored. So keep that in mind as you're going forward. But another thing that Chad had talked about, which I appreciate, is having access. I had to spend probably 15 minutes trying to move stuff out of this room so that I could get back to the water heaters so I could look at them to check, when were they put into play, service. And so, trying to get to that was almost impossible. But the one that is probably the worst is when we start storing stuff in front of our electrical boxes, our panel boards. We actually had boxes of ceramic tile that blocked the panel board. You couldn't get to it if you had to in a quick manner. So, and this is against code. This is not just a rule. This is a city code. So you are going to get dinged if you take and you have anything that is within 36 inches of your panel boards. So we've got to keep that all in mind. Look at the exterior, look at the interior. Do we meet code? Do we meet the rules that are in place? Just a little bit of common sense. But as Chad said earlier, if you see something, say something and get it taken care of. So.
Excellent. Yep, we're getting tons of mileage on that word all over from years. So real quick, this one, y'all, we're going to jump right into Q&A here. So our Courtney and Jim Howard that, kind of disappeared when we came on, they're going to come back up as we do a couple Q&A. We might not get it to everybody right now, but we're going to try to get to as many as we possibly can. If we don't get to yours, don't worry. We get a list and we'll make sure you get the answers through there. But as you see here, you will receive this presentation when the recording is done. As I said earlier, here's some property checklists that we have: fire and explosion checklist, full property checklist, the loss prevention guidelines. So this shows you where some of those standards and guidelines are from National Fire Protection Agency through building management. Those are good. And then we're going to also add links from DCEF on what properties they have and what they can provide as far as resources and activities. That's not the right term, but I can't think of it. It skipped my mind.
Support services.
Services, that's it. Such an easy word. I wanted a bigger word. All right. So we're going to Q&A time. So thank you there. So some of the questions that came out, there's been multiple ones asking about, how do they schedule an inspection? And I think this is going to be different for each part of us here. But, from a DCEF approach, how would they get the phenomenal, awesome, star-born Jim Michaels out to their facility? What triggers that?
If somebody comes onto our website, we actually have a place there that will allow you to request the initial consultation, which we will take and come out, look at the facility, and we'll look at the other aspects that Courtney had alluded to earlier, the finances, the ministry side of it, as well as the building. We also have the building evaluation service, which is a much more detailed service that we have, where we're going to look at everything in detail. We're going to look at the foundation. We're going to look at the roof, the roofing material. We're going to go into detail on the equipment as well. So, but go to our website and you can request one of those services from it.
Yeah, I just put that link in there in the chat so everyone can
Thank you,
click
Courtney.
there for the initial consultation. And then from there, it's sort of the front door, so to speak. And then from there, you can do a building evaluation with Jim, or you could potentially engage with a capital campaign support, or transformational services, or maybe even a loan or an investment. So starting with the initial consultation is a good place to begin.
Yeah.
Excellent. And those are the programs that we offer for deferred or preventive maintenance. Is that correct, Courtney?
Yeah,
That's
so
kind of the,
I said I would answer
yep.
live about
Yeah.
funding maintenance. So yeah, so I would say those are kind of two of the best things I would really want to point out is if there's, let's say, a roof that needs repairing and you're interested in maybe doing a capital campaign to fund that, that's something we can help with. Or if you're interested in a loan, that's also something we can help with. So I think a really good place to start is with that initial consultation, and then we can kind of take it from there.
All right. Excellent. Um, so I will say some of these questions that we have, I'm not skipping them, but some of these you're going to have to talk with your agent about. So some of the questions are agent related. Um, as far as some people were asking how much insurance should they have, so on and so forth, as far as numbers. That should be a conversation with your agent that you have.
And Chad, can I
Yeah, go ahead,
jump
Jim.
in here real quick?
Yep.
And if you go on our website, we have agents appointed to represent our program and spread across all 50 states. So if you go onto our website, if you're not part of us now, go on there and you can find what state you're in, and you can find the agent that's assigned to your state and reach out to them, or you can send an email to me and Chad, and we can help introduce you to that person as well too. So.
Absolutely. And then basically from an inspection standpoint for property, if you are with the insurance board program, you can either ask your agent to schedule, we can have what's called a digital self-inspection, where you kind of go around, take pictures, and we'll look at them and do that. Or we can send somebody out, boots on the ground, through a third-party vendor, that goes around and looks for those things that Jim, Michael, and I have been talking about today. So we can schedule that through, if you haven't had one. And most of the time, and Jim, I'm not sure how you all do it, but once we have those items, we do share that with the insurers, because as far as the insurance board goes, because we might have recommendations. So we want you to make sure this is what we found, this is where maybe it should be, and here's some things on how to close that gap up, so to speak, or seal the envelope if it's on the outside, kind of thing. So most of the time, the insurers do get those areas, those inspections at the completion of them.
And also, as we get information in on that, we understand that things can't get done immediately, and it's going to take time, and it's costly, and things have to be done. And we've always worked with all of our churches and found ways to help them, get the right recommendations to get their church up to safety where we want it to be. But we don't go around and cancel churches because they haven't done their loss control work. We just want to work with them and try to make sure that they're proactively working forward and finding a due date to get that finished. So,
question: are there any new requirements or policy changes coming for property for insurance board groups? I added the insurance board groups. Jim, you want to answer that, or?
We feel like the insurance board program is probably one of the most robust and broad coverage of all coverages. We've been doing this for 40 years with churches. We've pretty well ran into every potential claim that's out there possible, and we've made sure that we do have coverage to provide that for each church, depending on how much they want to cover and all that. So those are all things to be discussed with the local representative that we have in your state. So.
Okay, we have gone 15 minutes over, but I think it was a great time that we spent together, and 127 of you still stayed with us. So I do appreciate you very highly. Courtney, Jim, and Jim, appreciate you staying on with us. And anybody have any last minute goodbyes before I sign us off?
I just want to say quickly, thank you so much. We really appreciate working with all of you at the insurance board, and we always appreciate the opportunity to help and support our congregations.
Excellent. All right. And again, if there's a question that we didn't hit totally for you, really wanted to know, feel free to email me at ccunningham@insuranceboard.org, and I'll get the answer to you, and I can reach out to any of the team here to do that. So again, thank you all very much for coming. Jim, Courtney, thank you for your time. It was great. Jim, great job. As we tag team that, made me look good. So we will see everybody later, and within a week or so, you will get a recording and the resources we've talked about. Thank you all very much. God bless. Take care.